Durston X-Mid Pro 2 Tent Pitching Tips.
For those of you who watched my other video where I rolled my through hiker practice dice and pitched my Durston X-Mid Pro 2 in the backyard, I just wanted to tell you something so important. That was not my first time pitching this tent. I had already pitched it 3 times prior and learned how to do it. And the first 3 pitches did not come out so great. And I want to give you permission to fail your first time. But know this, you're not really failing. You're just starting to understand how the tent works and how the tension system and the geometry of it works. And once you get that, you'll get better and better at it, and it won't be an issue anymore. I do not recommend learning how to do this on the trail because some through hiker told you it was so easy. They set it up straight out of the box, and then every other through hiker thought they had to save face and tell you the same thing. No, practice with your tent. My first bit of advice is go to the link in the description and follow it over to where Dan Durston demonstrates on his own channel how to pitch this tent. He uses some very important specific terminology like 90-degree corners, and other through hikers have paraphrased that into other words about straight lines, and it can be very confusing because they're using the wrong words. And when you're setting up your tent and you don't have straight lines, it can mess you up. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute. But first I want you to go over and check out his video. Then come back here and I'm going to tweak it a little bit by showing you a few things that he does, but doesn't necessarily mention that he's doing. Now, when you go over there to watch it, just watch the detailed setup. Don't look at variations and troubleshooting yet. After you've pitched it a few times, then definitely go back and watch those portions of the video, but don't overwhelm yourself right away. You won't need to know that right away. And it'll be confusing and hard to follow until you have an idea of the mechanics of the tent. All right, back again, checked out that video. Let me preface this next part by telling you, I am not a professional. This is the first time I've had a trekking pole tent, the first time I've learned how to do it, and even my tent experience is very limited with a pop-up tent. But I was confused by this next bit, and in case you're new to the game like I am, maybe you find this helpful, maybe you don't, but I feel like I should mention it. In the video, he does this correctly, but he doesn't say he's doing it, and I didn't catch on to it, and it tripped me up. When he was putting in his first stake, he had it halfway in, and the line, the corner line from the tent, was around the stake. He was okay with that line sliding down to the ground. Now, my previous tent, I had to keep the line in the notch in order to put the next cross diagonal stake in and keep it taut. So that doesn't apply here. It's okay if the line from the corner, the tent, I don't know what you call that corner line of the tent, if it slides down the stake, it's okay. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be in the notch. When you move on to your next stake, you don't do what I did and keep running back and forth to try to keep the line in the notch, thinking that's going to make it more taut and pitch better in the end. It's irrelevant, it doesn't matter. It's okay if that line slides down. When you're all done getting all 4 stakes in the ground and mapped out, there is a point where you're going to lift all those up into the notches, and it does matter, but it doesn't initially.
Welcome to my backyard. There is no level ground here. It may look flat, but this is not really flat. It's at an angle and it does have bumps in it. But if I can pitch my tent here, I think I can do it anywhere. Okay, here's step 1. I laid out my tent in a basic rectangle. There's the zipper. There's the other zipper peak. Seems simple at first, right? All right, we're at our first corner. I have my first tent stake. Here's the tie to the corner of the tent. There's the loop, goes over the tent stake, fits in the notch. You'll take a rock and pound this in. But notice this little tension adjust right here. And see how this slides down? That's okay. Let it slide down. Okay, my first stake is pounded in halfway, just like Dan said, and now I've moved to the second corner. This confused me the first time. That seam is kind of hidden, and you have to pull fabric away off of it to expose it. You really want to have a good view of this seam right here. See that? So find that before you put in your next stake. Pull it taut like a guitar string. There we go. And again, it's okay if this line slides up or down. Don't worry about it. Now we're going to our third corner. And I'm going to do the same thing again, but using the terminology of setting it at a 90-degree angle. Don't let anyone tell you about straight lines, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. So I have it set up. I'm going to pound it in, nice and taut like a guitar string. And again, it's okay if this line slides down the stake, okay? I'm going to slide it up to the notch to demonstrate, but don't worry about it. Now here's my first tip. After you get that third stake halfway in, go back to your second stake and double check your 90-degree angle. Don't worry about this bowing. That's normal from the bathtub tension. Some hikers will incorrectly tell you to have straight lines. Incorrect terminology. Dan Durston does not say that. He says 90-degree angle. Now we get to our fourth corner and we put our last stake into the ground following Dan's instructions. If stake 4 does not go into the ground, leaving you with a nice taut rectangle, the problem is actually with stake 3. So pull stake 4 back out, go back to stake 3, readjust, and then come back and try stake 4 again. And then, as they say, lather, rinse, repeat as needed until you get it right. So at this point in the game, I like to actually circle around my floor plan and check everything. Now notice the sides of this are bowed in. That's from the tension of the bathtub. So when Dan Durston says an accurate rectangle, he's meaning from the 4 points of the tent, not the walls of the tent. So don't panic if you see that bowing in. It's correct. So the 4 points of my floor plan are an accurate rectangle. And this is where that straight line terminology from other thru hikers can really throw you off. But now that everything's in place and I'm sure of it, now I'm going to guide those lines up into the notches and pound all 4 tent stakes into the ground. Now this is also where my technique differs a little from Dan Durston's. He adjusts each of these tension lines as he slides those lines into the notches and one by one works his way around. And I'm going to show you a close-up of that. I prefer to pound in all the stakes and then circle around again and do any minor adjustments on these adjustable tension lines. I find it works better when you're on unlevel ground. Now once you get really good at pitching your tent, remember to go back and check out the variations portion of Dan's video. He's going to show you how to use these 4 adjustable corner ties to preset your tent in different weather conditions to allow for extra ventilation in summer or to keep out rain when it's pouring. The next step is putting your trekking poles into place, up into that pocket up in there. And there we go. And from the top, staying under that reinforced area. And then down at the bottom, your trekking pole goes through 1 loop at the bathtub and 1 loop that is my ground sheet, which I opted to purchase and add on to it, just for extra protection. Zip it up, repeat on the other side. And that's a pretty nice pitch right there. Now this is the 6th time I've done this. And now breaking down the tent, I've taken out my trekking poles. I lay my peaks down into the center. That one went that way. This one folded this way. Before I pull out my ground stakes, I like to reset these adjustable lines at the halfway mark. So they're all the same when I start again tomorrow night. All my stakes are out. There's my tent. And now it's time to fold it. There are probably many ways to do this. I fold both sides inward to the center. Let me get the other end of this over here to the center. Now the bathtub's kind of unequal, so you got to kind of flip it up here and there so it looks like that. And now I'm going to do that again. I'm going to fold it into the center on each side. I've already done one side, and I'm going to show you doing the other. It's kind of hard to do one-handed. It's very easy to do two-handed. All right, there we go. And now I'm going to fold this in half with one hand. There we go. And now I'm going to fold it lengthwise once and press the air out of it. It comes out really easy. And next I'm going to fold the other end in, and that's just so all this stuff here, this dyneema, is not hanging out the top of the stuff sack after. So I like all the lines and tids and bits to be tucked in. And now I'm just going to roll it with one hand. Way easier with two. When I'm done here, I'm going to take this rolled up tent and put it between my knees so my knees hold it in place. And then I can slide the stuffed sack right over the top of it with 2 hands, not one. And then take it out, flip it over. There we go. Pretty easy. I did that one-handed, so imagine how easy. Cinch it up. Bring it over with my other items. Double check I have all my tent stakes, and now it's time to clear these tent stakes out. I can use other tent stakes to scrape it out, and then fingers. Pack it all up. Look back to make sure I have everything, and I'm on my way.